Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Multiverse movie show. Today, we're discussing why Warner Brothers should restore the SnyderVerse. Now, of course, many of you guys, if you guys need background information on why I talk about the SnyderVerse, basically, it's my favorite franchise out there. I've been very vocal about the SnyderVerse stuff on my channel for 2 years. I've also been vocal about the toxic side. I know I now have a reputation of being anti-Snyder. I'm not. I'm anti-toxic Snyder fans because I care too much about this fandom to let it die. But today, I feel like I've always said they need to restore it, but I've never specified why. So I have this presentation. We're going to talk about why it should be restored today. So stay tuned. You guys let me know in the comments what you think about this presentation. Would you like more presentations like this? Whatever it is, please let me know in the comment sections. Now let's go back here. So the first point I need to make is Batman vs Superman made over 800 million even with negative reviews. Now, I know a lot of people like to point at BVS as the reason why the SnyderVerse will never get restored. I actually want to use this as a benefit. So the movie made 873 worldwide. We do have to remember this movie cost like around, oh wait, it says it here right now, budget of 250 million, and it made over 800 million. That's good. A movie has to make a lot more than its budget in order for it to be a success. Now, I know a lot of people want to use this excuse that, oh, Batman vs Superman needed to make a billion, and why didn't it make a billion? It's a failure, it's a flop. There's even been people lying that BBS is a flop. It's not a flop, okay? A flop is not making 800 million. Now, yes, were the expectations a billion? Yes. By the way, I do want to ask everyone to watch my entire presentation before you put a comment on this, okay? Because I always get that. I always see people will look at the thumbnail and title and think, okay, now I gotta go talk about him rather than actually watch the video and listen to him. So I do ask you to stay tuned for the entire video. But Batman vs Superman, no movie in history, except maybe Avatar or Endgame, no movie in history should have to make a billion because a billion is a margin that very few movies have succeeded at. You have to remember that this is the second movie in a cinematic universe. Yes, Batman vs Superman are the two most iconic superheroes of all time, except maybe for like Spider-Man or something like that. And they're the two of the biggest names. It's historical that it's the first time they meet each other on the big screen. But you have to remember, this is still a Batman no one ever knew. This is still a Superman that people are just getting used to, especially because Man of Steel was very controversial. And the fact that it made 800 million. And remember, negative reviews. A lot of people do not go watch movies if there's negative reviews. Look at Morbius. Morbius did well in its opening weekend, but then it had a massive drop off on the second weekend, and now it's expected to be a flop. So not every movie when negative reviews ever gets to 800 million. That's incredible. That is genuinely incredible for it to do. So I think people need to give it much more respect, especially since it's the second movie in a cinematic universe. I know the expectations were high, and look, rightfully so. Movies like Batman vs Superman, they're gonna have high expectations, but you do have to realize that the expectation was for a movie that was the second movie in a cinematic universe with two new characters, and it was dealing with negative reviews. And I know everyone's gonna use the excuse, oh, but Captain Marvel made a billion. That's an unknown character. You have to also remember that Captain Marvel had two benefits to it. Number one, the Marvel name has confirmed itself, has solidified itself as a cinematic, uh, complete monster truck. They're just railing through other movies and all that. And that was during a time where people were so excited for Endgame, a movie that had over 20 movies of tension, of built up, and it had that benefit. And so Captain Marvel lived off that benefit because people were desperate to go see this. And also, I think this also plays a part, but we also have to remember that was a historical thing for women because that was the first female cinematic universe movie in the Marvel universe. So that also plays benefit. Batman vs Superman did not have that benefit, especially because it's again a cinematic universe that's yet to solidify itself. Because the only movie prior to this was Man of Steel, and even with all those negative reviews, it still made 800 million. So that right there shows that this was a success. I know people expected a billion, and I think one of the problems with Warner Brothers, moving forward, because what ended up happening is they panicked. They didn't know what they were doing. They were so scared that they started pulling the plugs on things they weren't supposed to pull the plugs on. They were messing up the movies they already had with Suicide Squad, Justice League. And I'm actually, we should be glad that they didn't do anything with Wonder Woman. We got to be lucky about that, because I feel like they knew that that movie was still going to do well, so they just let it be what it was. But look at Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is the example of Warner Bros. Should not panic, because that movie did really well financially, critically, and audience wise. So use that as an example. But instead, Warner Brothers, they saw it didn't make 1 billion, and we're still disappointed. To me, this is the example of, let's say you sell a car. You're trying to sell a car for $10,000. You're trying to sell a car for $10,000. So you're thinking to yourself, oh, we're gonna make $10,000, $10,000, and this is an average car that isn't very good. You already have a lot of miles on it, so you should have probably not expected that much money. But then all of a sudden you make $9,500. You're close to that part that you wanted to be at, but you have to understand that you should have lowered your expectations, and you still made a lot of money off that car. You probably shouldn't have expected that many people to get, especially with so many miles on it. The oil's maybe not that good. I use Batman vs Superman as that example. Now the next example is, and this one I feel like nobody talks about, but more people love the SnyderVerse now than they did back in 2016. I'll tell you this right now. To those Snyder fans who weren't here prior to like 2018, I'll use 2018 as like a jump, because I do think becoming a Snyder fan started becoming more popular like 2019, 2020. Back in 2016 till 2018, and you could even say 2019 and maybe even 2020. Back then, if you told people hashtag release, I mean, of course, the Snyder Cut stuff didn't happen until 2017, but if you told anyone you liked BVS, you probably would have been like, I got this a lot from people in my personal life and on social media. Anytime I told anyone that I liked Batman vs Superman or even Man of Steel, all I got was a lot of people, or I always got questions. How? Why do you like it? What, you like the Martha thing? You like this? But now, when you go online and when you go in person, you'll still have those comments, but it's nowhere near that amount. And one of the best examples was, look how Zack Snyder's Justice League did on Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes, Man of Steel score was horrible. The score for Batman vs Superman was horrible. Well, the Man of Steel score wasn't horrible. It was just more average. But the Batman vs Superman score was very negative. Suicide Squad 2016, I mean, that was butchered up. That had bad reviews and all that. But BVS had very bad reviews. And Justice League, that's 305 reviews, 71%. That's a really good score. And then look at the audience, 94%, with over 25,000 people giving it a 94%. That's insane. This would not have happened in 2016. Because we also have to remember there was an expectation back in 2016. In 2016, it was the height of Marvel's popularity. This was like the peak of Marvel. You just got done with Civil War. Doctor Strange is coming out soon. Or I think I already come out. I don't remember. Thor Ragnarok the next year was going to do well. Everyone's excited to see Spider-Man's debut in the cinematic universe. Everyone knew Infinity War was coming up, so we were about to see the big bad Thanos show up eventually. Marvel was at its peak of its powers, while DC was just starting off. They just had Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman that barely come out with negative reviews and all that. So we have to remember that people look at it different now, because I do think this is what happened. A lot of people, Marvel came out with Endgame and it felt like a great conclusion. And now I feel like with DC, one thing they have a benefit of is that now they can build something new. Now they can do what they want to do. And I believe one of the reasons why this movie got so much higher reviews than BVS was, one of the major things was, first of all, you gave Zack Snyder his full creative control that he desired. You hired him for that reason, so you might as well let him do that. And the other thing is, now you don't have to compete so much with Marvel. Yes, Marvel's doing big things like Multiverse of Madness and No Way Home and maybe the next Avengers movies, but at that time, everyone was so busy with Marvel. Now it feels like you kind of get an abundance on both, Now that Sony's trying to get in the ring, now that X-Men stuff is like, it's like people now want a solidified universe, a universe that you can maintain. Everyone, not only that, but you also have to remember cinematic universes are much more popular now than they were in 2016. And so there's a lot of reasons why now there's more love for the Snyder. If you go on Twitter right now and put hashtag restore the Snyderverse, the high chances that you're gonna get comments of people agreeing with you, people loving what you say. I mean, me last year I gained a little bit of popularity of loving these movies, uh, but back in 2016, 2017, that was not the case. If you had told anyone that you hated this movie, then you were the unpopular opinion. You were the small minority. Now it doesn't feel that way. Now you have people who agree with you, and even people that disagree with you will kind of just be like, you don't like, you like these movies, I don't. Oh well. It's like it's not as aggressive as it was back then. You were mocked for being a DC fan. I can tell you, I went to high school. I had a lot of friends that loved Marvel. I remember back then I got constantly, always got crapped on because I loved Batman vs Superman. That I loved Man of Steel. And even I started off not liking BVS. Then a couple of months later and all that, I eventually came to love the movie. And when I loved it, it was kind of hard to tell people why, because they always come up with, oh, but the Martha stuff. Oh, they rushed their cinematic universe. Oh my God, it's like, you know what I mean. And this Rotten Tomatoes score by both audience and critics, both of them loved it. And you also have to remember, it got a high viewership on. For some reason, it won't pop up, but it had a high viewership on HBO Max. I believe, I cannot remember, but I think it was either first or second place that it actually ended up one of the highest viewed stuff in in HBO Max. I think the only thing that beat it out was Godzilla vs Kong, but I don't remember if it was first or second. It was one of those two spots, and that's good because you also have to remember that in 2021, Warner Bros. Made the decision to put all their theatrical movies. This includes Matrix, a big franchise. This includes Godzilla vs Kong, Mortal Kombat, other DC movies like the Suicide Squad. They chose to put all those on streaming, so Zack Snyder's Justice League had to compete with movies that were literally going theatrical, that were getting far more promotion, because we have to remember, these theatrical movies got far more promotion than Zack Snyder's Justice League, and yet it was still able to beat out those movies when it came to viewerships. You know? It's much more popular to love Zack Snyder's universe now than it was back then. One of the examples was the Oscars. We won. That Flash scene won. So there is more popularity for the franchise. So I feel like they need to capitalize on that. Now, I think that's the truth. So yeah, the next one is Suicide Squad 2016. I think I should probably put that. Nah, never mind. But 2016, Suicide Squad 2016 made, even with its bad reviews, 700 million worldwide. And it had a budget of 175 million. I believe the Batman had a budget of 185 million. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I just did some research. I believe it was that. And made 746 worldwide. So Suicide Squad 2016 made around the same thing the Batman did. And everyone's claiming that the Batman's a success, which it is. And I made an entire video saying that the Batman's a success. But we got to give that to Suicide Squad also. A movie that had a high amount of negativity, and I believe had a far more negativity than Batman vs. Superman, still made 700 million worldwide. That is incredible. That is freaking amazing. This movie did well. Yes, it did horribly critically and audience-wise. But even with those negative reviews, with two movies in a row with negative reviews, it still made this amount of money. That is crazy. I think those are fighting numbers. Those are numbers you got to look at. And even with this bad negative movie, still it made a lot of money. People want to see this SnyderVerse, whether people want to deny it or not. So that goes back to my example of crap. Why isn't that? Okay. That Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Batman vs Superman, and Aquaman. Yes, I'm going to include Aquaman. I always hate when people when people try to debate that the Snyderverse shouldn't be restored because it wouldn't make money. The typical thing is Aquaman made $1 billion, and these other movies, they make $1 billion. You have to remember that Aquaman is part of the Snyderverse. The one thing they mentioned was Aquaman saved Atlantis by fighting off Steppenwolf. That also happened in the Zack Snyder Justice League. He saved Atlantis by defeating Steppenwolf. And remember, James Wan was on board. I believe Zack was involved in getting James Wan to do Aquaman. And also Jason Momoa, who casted Jason Momoa as Aquaman, that was Zack Snyder. Amber Heard, was also part of that too. Willem, yeah, we ignore that. Willem Dafoe, all those actors, or wait, was King Orm cast already? I believe that was a James Wan thing, but Willem Dafoe, Jason Momoa, guess who casted them? That was Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder was the one that brought them. So I include Aquaman as part of the Snyderverse because it doesn't really change anything from Zack Snyder's universe. It doesn't. I mean, except for like the water breathing, but honestly, that's a simple thing to explain. That's just a small change. It's kind of like, Edward Norton played Hulk in Incredible Hulk, but then Mark Ruffalo played Hulk in the MCU, in the rest of the MCU. So all these movies were financially successful. The only one was Justice League 2017, a movie that wasn't even Snyder's to begin with. And it's a movie that now has a different narrative because Zack Snyder's Justice League came out. It did incredibly well with critics and audience on Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, and literally every. I think Metacritic also did pretty well with the score. A lot of reviewers on YouTube, John Campea, Sean Chandler, they all really liked the movie. And again, it was one of the most viewed things on HBO Max in a year where they put almost all their theatrical movies on streaming. That's impressive. Zack Snyder's Justice League, without a theatrical release, was competing with theatrical movies. I think that's a success right there. And then another one that I would like to bring up is Shazam and Birds of Prey didn't make the money that Snyder's DCU did. Shazam, I cannot remember how much Shazam did, but it did not make like the billion that Aquaman was, 700 million. It did pretty well. Shazam did well financially, but Birds of Prey didn't. Now, some of y'all are wondering, why didn't I include Suicide Squad in this, or James Gunn's Suicide Squad? Let's be fair, that was during one of the heights in the pandemic. I believe there were spikes in the virus at the time. More people were not going to theaters. It was on streaming, so it already had to deal with pirating and stuff like that. So I'm not going to include that. Which that movie did flop financially. Let's not deny that. But Shazam, it did well, but it did not make the numbers that BVS and all these other movies made. And this was a movie with far higher reviews than all of these movies except for like Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was like the one movie that probably got higher reviews than Shazam, and even Aquaman. Shazam got higher reviews than Aquaman. I remember when Shazam came out, everyone was saying it was the best DC movie since The Dark Knight. Shazam was loved, and not only that, but it was a family movie. Family movies tend to make more money in the box office, but this movie didn't make anywhere near the numbers that BVS did, which was a very adult movie, and none of the numbers that Wonder Woman did, which literally is gods in a World War II, or Suicide Squad. It didn't make that number of money. And then Birds of Prey, that movie flopped financially. That movie did not do well. And I actually like Birds of Prey. I like Birds of Prey. I won't deny it. I like Birds of Prey. I also like Shazam. I know I'm in the unpopular opinions, but Birds of Prey didn't do well financially, and I can't deny that. So everything post Snyder has not made the money. I mean, the only one you could use as a debate is probably Peacemaker, because Peacemaker had high ratings on HBO Max. It was loved by both critics and audience, and then James Gunn's Suicide Squad was also loved by critics and audience. And so I guess you could use those for debates, but if we're talking financially, they're not making the numbers that BVS Wonder Woman did. Although that's why I cut out Suicide Squad, because it doesn't count. That movie was during a pandemic era. And now another thing I feel like needs to be included is, of course, with the Warner Brothers Discovery merger, one of the major things they made sure to highlight is that they want a cinematic, they want to keep things close. And I think the only thing they're not going to keep close is probably the Batman. They're probably going to allow the Batman to be its own universe, but then they're going to continue doing their DCEU. But this is important. This DCEU would have been a cinematic universe, something they want, something connected. You have Batman, Superman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, then you can spin off with Martian Manhunter, Green Lantern Corps, all that. But this was a cinematic universe that was going to have an epic conclusion that would have rivaled Endgame. A conclusion of over like 5 movies, 6 movies, however. You would have an epic Lord of the Rings style, Harry Potter style conclusion with a bunch of world building and potential for more movies and spin-offs. Because remember, that was Zack Snyder's plan. His plan was to leave after part 3, but leave it open to where you can continue with a lot of these characters. Like you could continue with Superman, Flash, you can continue with Wonder Woman, but not only that, but you could continue with more characters. So if you want to do Martian Manhunter along the line, go ahead and do that. Gotham City Sirens, Green Lantern Corps, Suicide Squad. You could still continue in the future with more installments after the conclusion, or even in between like these movies. You could still do these movies. So it's not like the Snyderverse was just going to be one thing. The Snyderverse was an expansion. Why do you think Zack Snyder allowed David Ayer to do his movie? Then he allowed Patty Jenkins to do her movie. Then he allowed James Wan to do his stuff and all that. Everyone could get a slice of the pie. You know, you get a benefit of that world building. Imagine allowing the Snyderverse to happen, allowing Justice League Part 2 and Part 3 to happen, and then eventually when that concludes, you can go and promote all your other movies saying, this is part of the extended DCEU. This is part of the DCU, a universe where Darkseid fought the Justice League in an all-out war. And you would have had that big CGI final battle, because that was in Zack Snyder's plan. That big CGI battle you could have promoted in commercials, because whether we want to admit it or not, movies nowadays, a lot of people love these big CGI battles that Marvel offers. Snyder had that in offer, and you could have promoted the heck out of that. And you could have told people, hey, look, come to our universe. You get this, you get that. And again, you could have used the benefit that more people love these movies now than they did back then. You know, that's the thing. I feel like nobody's ever talks about that, but that's the reality. Being a Snyder fan in 2022 is much easier than being a Snyder fan back in 2016. Back in 2016, even the DC fandom was divided. The DC fandom was incredibly divided. Even people who liked Man of Steel didn't like BVS at the time, but now the shifts have changed. Some people who were kids at the time now love these movies, are much older, and even people who didn't like those movies, now there's a lot of people who like them. You know, I literally had a close friend of mine who was a big Marvel fan who would always make fun of me for liking BVS Man of Steel. I remember he told me he loved Zack Snyder's Justice League. He thought it was an amazing movie. He thought it was a great movie. And I feel like that needs to be pointed out. So you had this epic cinematic universe with an epic conclusion, with potential world building and potential for more movies and spin-offs. And you could have also done HBO Max series too. So you could also platform HBO Max. You could have platformed, I don't know, whatever you want with this epic conclusion. Right now it's more confusing because nobody knows where things are heading. Nobody knows what's going on. But if you had continued with a cinematic universe, people would have understood what you're doing. Part of the reason why Marvel movies succeed so much financially right now is because people love that satisfaction of it being part of a larger story. You go to Shang-Chi and you realize, holy crap, this guy's going to be with the Avengers soon. You go watch Eternals and you realize, holy crap, maybe some of these are going to meet Avengers, because that Avengers name is part of it. Nobody would have watched Moon Knight if it wasn't part of the MCU. Whether we want to admit it or not, Moon Knight wouldn't have been that popular. And that's something that DCEU could have done future, because now people would have seen those Justice League movies and thought, oh my god, this is part of that epic universe with aliens fighting and stuff like that. Dude, that's a win-win. Why do you think people do a lot of spin-offs now? You could have had your own amazing franchise if you had continued in that path. And then you also have to remember Zack Snyder's Justice League got incredible reviews and were much higher than his previous movies. Yeah, Zack Snyder's Justice League was higher rated than Batman vs. Superman. It was. It really was. And that would have probably continued on with future movies. Also, one of the complaints I have from Batman vs. Superman, or not that I have, the ones that I've heard, they typically tend to be, oh, this movie is so dark and gloomy. Go look at Zack Snyder's Justice League. One thing I love about that movie is it's not dark and gloomy. You have the Flash being all hyped and positive. You have Cyborg becoming happy at the end. Aquaman's cool and rad. You know, obviously the Aquaman 2018 movie with the same exact character proved that it could make $1 billion. You have all these other characters who aren't just dark and gloomy, while Batman vs. Superman was completely dark and gloomy. So this wasn't just a cinematic universe that you expected to be dark and edgy. Yes, it would have had that, but it also had unique characters. I mean, again, a lot of people love the Flash in Justice League Snyder edition, and that is proof that more people would have loved these epic conclusion movies. And then this would have been a chance to compete with Marvel, because you're not going to compete with Marvel having individual movies. And look, I've always believed in the philosophy that you don't need to compete with Marvel. Marvel's doing their thing. You're doing your own thing. Just do what you can. But I know the obvious thing is you're going to want to compete with Marvel. This would have been the thing. You could have competed with Marvel. You could have created your own cinematic universe. Imagine telling people, oh my god, we got all these epic movies, but they're not just these epic movies. You also get these spin-offs. You get these things. That would have helped those movies, those shows, to tell people, holy crap. I mean, look at Peacemaker. Peacemaker used this for Peacemaker. One thing I love about Peacemaker is it used all of this in its own benefit. It brought in Superman, it brought in Wonder Woman, it had these references to all these other characters. You could have continued doing that because these references are funny. These references are people something liked, and Peacemakers use that as its benefit. And the rest of the DC, you could have done that. Imagine you want to go do a, I don't know, Black Canary spin-off series in the SnyderVerse. You could have had this quick reference where it's like, oh yeah, I got to see Superman in the core. I was outside there, in Batman vs Superman. Yeah, Superman saved my life. Like that, those little references, they work. Like Shang-Chi, when they quickly reference the snap, a lot of people like it because it's a reference to a movie they love. You know, uh, so you would have competed with Marvel, and then the big thing I feel like needs to be mentioned, and I'll make it bigger. It says use Batman, Superman, and Aquaman for promotion. Because that's one thing you could have used for your future spin-offs. You could have said, this is the same universe where Batman and Superman are there. And the reason why I bring Aquaman is because now it's a billion-dollar success. Aquaman is now a loved character. A lot of people love Jason Momoa's Aquaman. But you can also, the Batman just proved that Batman character is still loved and popular. And Superman, I know a lot of people like to say Superman's boring and all that, which I disagree because I freaking love the Superman. With Superman, he's recognizable. Everyone knows Superman. Everyone knows the red and blue of the iconic Man of Steel. And you could have used them for promotion. I mean, imagine you have a Green Arrow series, and on the trailer you have a quick image of like a billboard that says Superman is here to protect the world or something like that. Just imagine the big stuff you could have done. I mean, it's just incredible what you could have done, but you didn't choose to do that. And now, now things are tough. Now this, if you had continued with the Snyderverse, you would have had spin-offs. You would have made a lot more money. Okay, so something we need to debate. All the people who are anti-Snyder and pro-Snyder. Why does that sound like an abortion debate? I'm sorry, but to both of you, I feel like one thing we can agree on is that the DCU would have been much more stable and much more successful if they had continued Snyder's plan. Can we agree? Are we going to agree with this? I feel like that's something we can agree on because the current DCEU kind of feels like a jumbled up mess. Nobody knows what the heck is going on. And they haven't done as financially as well as the Snyder DCU. And again, on top of that, the Snyderverse is far more successful or far more loved now than it was back then. And one of the proofs is the Rotten Tomato scores. You know how many people on the reviews were saying, oh, I didn't like the previous Snyder stuff, but I love this one. And I guarantee you that would have continued on with future movies. And something we can't say it's a coincidence is Zack Snyder's Justice League is the most loved out of all three movies. And it is also the one that had the most creative liberty with Zack Snyder. Because, Man of Steel was his movie. He has said that before. But Batman vs. Superman had to have an Ultimate Edition. Of course, Suicide Squad was butchered up. Justice League was butchered up. And all that. So he never really got his fair shot. He only had like 3 movies and that's it. Boom. They gave up. And also, we have to keep this in mind. The beginning of the DCEU made more money than the beginning of the MCU. Go look at comparisons. And it's also, the MCU did have some fails at the beginning. Go look at Incredible Hulk. Incredible Hulk did not do all that well financially. I think it made 300 worldwide. I think it was somewhere around that. The Incredible Hulk didn't do all that well financially. That movie is seen as a fail, and that was only the second movie. Imagine if Kevin Feige had panicked like Warner Brothers did. We would have never gone the MCU that it is now. Iron Man 2. That movie actually did well financially, but critically, there was a lot of criticism for that movie. That movie wasn't as loved to many people. And that was before the Avengers. So this was in the setup. Captain America, the First Avenger, did all right in the box office. The first Thor movie did all right in the box office. They weren't major hits. But guess what? Kevin Feige had a plan. They executed that plan. And look where they are now. Now they can do whatever they want. And they'll make a crap load of money. Not just theatrically, but now streaming. Now it's series. And I think the DCU could have done that. A cinematic universe that made a lot more money than the beginning of the MCU. And you know, these movies are more loved now than they were back then. It's not the unpopular opinion to say that you love the Snyder universe anymore. That's actually kind of almost a popular opinion. And even you have to also realize that a lot of people who don't like the Snyder movies also those people that don't like the Snyder movies, those people also go to watch these movies, surprisingly. So you have those people's pocket, you get their money. And the general audience loves epic, giant sci-fi blockbusters. And look at Batman vs Superman's trailers. They all promoted this giant, epic sci-fi blockbuster. Zack Snyder's Justice League got a lot of views from the general audience, and it would have probably continued that with future movies. Like, imagine telling people, look at this big epic movie that involves Batman, Superman, Aquaman, and you could use Aquaman a lot for your promotions, especially because that movie succeeded very well financially. You could have used all that for your cinematic universe. But anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. I know it's a long video where I rambled on about the SnyderVerse, why it should be restored, why it could be very beneficial financially. But thank you guys for watching this video. You guys let me know in the comments, what do you think? Do you agree, disagree, whatever it is, please let me know below in the comment section down below. I'll be talking to you guys later. I do want to thank all the members for supporting us financially. We got Pedro Bonilla, Rhea, BK Dan, Lit Alex, the CJH, Mad Max, Ashley the Widow, and Daniel Martin. Thank you guys for supporting us financially. And if you want to support us financially, it is only 99 cents a month. You can go and hit that join button and you support us financially. And again, it's only 99 cents a month, and it's everything helps. All these people, they're getting shout outs at the end of every one of my videos. You get stickers for live chats. You get a lot of stuff. And again, it's very cheap. It's very, very, very cheap, and it helps contribute financially here, whether it's new equipment like cameras. I got 2 cameras already. That's kind of cool. You get the mic, you got all this stuff, the computer, the keyboard, everything. It all goes back to the channel. So thank you guys for watching. I'll be talking to you guys next time. Peace.